Most property flips don't fail because of the refurb. They fail before the first brick is even touched. If you get these 5 things right in 2026, you'll dramatically increase your chances of a profitable flip, because right now you're at the mercy of interest rates, tighter margins, slower buys, and less room for error. That's why I'm going to break down the 5 secrets that flippers use to protect their profit before, during, and after the refurb. Now, secret number 1 is you either buy right or you don't buy at all. Because the actual truth with flipping properties, you don't make money on the flip. You make money when you buy in the property. That's why you have to have all your numbers calculated. You have to know what the true after repair value, or ARV, of the property is before you get into it. And you can't be emotional and just increase the price because you think, oh, everything's going well with property. By the time we come to sell it, it would have moved up, because the markets change all the time. So you have to be really careful on how you calculate in it. Are you using sole comparables of houses that are on the same street that look exactly like your house? Or are you using the current listings to gauge what it could potentially be after repair value, if that's like, let's say, the best house in the street? Or are you using the actual market demand? Like, have you found somewhere that's like, that everyone wants to be there? Maybe it's got really good schools, because you have to think about all these things before you even think of purchasing the property. Yeah, because a lot of times when you see people going to auctions, they just get emotional. They see it's a cheap property and they're like, oh yeah, I'm going to buy it. And then they start outbidding each other to the point where it kills the deal, but they still buy it. Not realizing now the numbers don't make sense. Yes, it might feel like a good deal, okay, but after you've done the required repairs, it's going to kill all the profit that could have potentially been in that deal. So you really have to stick to your numbers on this. So let me fully break down all the costs you're going to have to think of before you put the offer in. Okay, now the first breakdown of all the expenses you're going to have to think about is the purchase price. What is the price that you managed to secure for that property? Then after that, you're going to have to think of the stamp duty, the legal fee. Okay, the legal fees will depend with who you go. I suggest you probably go with someone a bit more on the expensive side, because they're going to know what they're doing. And again, you get what you pay for. Stamp duty, there's a lot of calculators out there. You can just find that online, see how much you're going to have to pay for that. But that's another cost that you have to think about when purchasing. Because after you've added stamp and legal costs, you then also have to factor in the refurb cost. And that could completely range if you're doing just like a complete back to brick refurb, or if you're just doing a few cosmetic rooms, like maybe like a room here and there that you just touching up. And the minute I say refurb, you should automatically think that there's going to be an extra 10 to 20% contingency, because no refurb ever goes to plan. And if it does, trust me, you found a unicorn. Congratulations. Okay, because that's so rare. So always having 10 to 20% contingency of what you think your refurb budget will be, because chances are you're going to have to fix stuff that you didn't expect or see when you were first viewing the property. Now you also have to think of things like financing costs. Did you take money out from bridging? Did you take money out for investment? Now, this doesn't apply to you if you just use cash, your cold hard cash. This part doesn't apply. But if you did use financing, this is another expense that you'll have to factor in. Then after financing costs, you got the holding cost of the property, so all the utilities, because someone still has to pay for that. And since now the property is technically yours, it falls on your shoulders. Then once you've done all of that, you finish the refurb. Now you also have to think of all the selling costs involved. And those are all the agent fees, the staging cost if you got it staged, and the marketing that you did to get the property sold. Breathe, okay? Because that was a lot. This is why if you don't know all the real numbers before exchange, you're gambling, not invested. Because all those costs can completely kill all your margins, especially if you didn't expect to have to pay for them. This is why you always need to have margin discipline. Things like the minimum profit target, that's the bottom end of what you are willing to accept. And then also having things like the percentage buffers, like the 10 to 20% for the refurb. And then another good one is to also have another 5 to 10% buffer on the end value, just in case the market crashes. Because I don't know about you, but I can't see into the future. So it's something that you have to plan for. But buying right isn't enough. You have to control the money flow, which takes us to secrets number 2, and that's flips don't get ruined by bad builders. They get ruined by having bad payment structures for the contractors. Let me explain. I wish I could say this wasn't the case, but here's the unfortunate thing. Paying large sums of the refurb cost up front will completely kill your leverage. Think of it this way, right? Paying too much upfront is now going to lead to you having zero control on the speed of the project, because they could just be like, oh yeah, this is going to take this long, this is going to take this long, and they could just delay it because you've already given them like 50% of the project cost upfront. So it kind of kills their motivation and urgency to get the jobs done and pay their people. Whereas when it's stage payments, i.e., you pay them after they've done the strip out, after they've done the first fix, after, like at each stage of the project, it makes them want to work to achieve the next goal, to keep moving the project forward and at a faster pace, because the quicker they can get it done, the quicker they can get paid. Whereas if you give 50% upfront, they're just going to be like, oh, okay, I don't really need to rush that much. And then delays happen. And the worst case scenario, they could just completely disappear. And you've given 50% of the project. You're completely screwed. So the best way to stop this from ever happening is to break the job into milestones. And you pay on completion of each stage. Like I said, you pay once the strip out's done. You pay after the first fix. After the second fix, decoration, etc. Plus, when you pay in this way, you will also understand what's happening in the market and how much each thing costs. So when you do another project, you know, you're always in the know, and no one can ever pull wool over your eyes. And because the payments are tied to completion of each stage, it gives you more chances to go into the property and inspect their work, see if they're any good. If they are good, then you can crack on. If they're bad, you can stop right there at that stage and then try finding another team, if that's the worst case scenario, instead of waiting weeks upon end for you to then find out, oh my gosh, these guys were terrible, what the hell? And then you stuck because you paid a large amount of money at the start. That it's going to be difficult for you to get back. So when you tie the payments to inspections, they're going to make sure that each stage they've done a good job, so you're happy to sign it off, give them their money, and then they're happy they got paid, and then they can crack on to the next stage. And again, like I said before, it will just help you get better at noticing what's a good job and what's not a good job, and how much things cost per stage of the renovation. Another thing as well, when everyone knows what stage everyone's at, it's just complete transparency between you, your team, and the contractors. Like, no one can then say, oh, you know, you didn't tell me I needed to do this week or whatever. Everyone knows at each stage what they need to be doing, which actually will make the project go a lot smoother, because you won't have people just second guessing and doing their own thing, which could delay the project by weeks or even months in worst case scenarios. This is why it's so important for you to have a written scope of works for you and for them, just so it's written and it's down, so no one has any excuses to say, oh, I didn't know we were meant to do this or that. It covers your back, and it'll give you more peace of mind. It'll come across more professional to them, and for them, it'll make it a lot smoother, because then they know, okay, this is what you're judging their work on. This is what you expect to get done at each stage. So then when things go wrong, people have to be accountable and say, look, you know, we both had the scope of works. Why wasn't it followed? Because when things go wrong, you could always point to the scope of works and say, look, this is what I wanted. This is why it's so important to have a written scope of works with itemized breakdowns of everything to be done to the property, because it covers your back, and it just makes the communication you have with the contractor a lot better. Because I don't know about you guys, but I've seen like the shows like Cowboy Builders, or just people's experiences with bad builders, and most of the times they've paid like 80% upfront, and now they're just chasing the builder because he's disappeared. Like, he doesn't care. They're just going to take the money and go if they find it too much work or too much effort. They just be like, I've got most of the project's money. I'll just go now. This is why if you completely control the cash flow that you give to them, it'll equal you having more project control. But even having perfect contractors can't save you if you skip this next step, which is get approvals if you need to before you swing that hammer. The most expensive thing in property flipping is building something you legally can't sell or legally allowed to. This is why you always have to make sure to talk to your architect to make sure you're getting planning permission when it's required. Because if you're doing extensions, loft conversions, change of use, or changing the layout of the building, there is a high chance you might need to get planning permission. So just make sure you talk to the architect to know what you need to do. And they'll help you create a plan and design a floor plan that will give you the best chance of securing that planning. And please, please, please don't start the work thinking, oh yeah, they'll definitely like give us permission to do this. Because again, it depends. And if they say no and you've already started the 2-story extension, like, yeah, that's a huge cost that, again, is going to kill your margins. That's why going in this order of approval first, work second, and then marketing third matters. Unless you want to use CGIs to start your property marketing early, and then the marketing and the work side would just switch spaces. So you'd go approval, marketing, and then work. But if you want to know more about that, the link's below. As the consequences for doing it wrong could lead to enforcement notices and forced removal of what you've built so far. So if you've done a 2-story extension, they'll force you to knock it all down. Now, that's a huge cost, and it's going to cause you huge delays, which are just going to kill your profit on the deal. And then if you start the marketing early, for example, and then they see, oh, you know, all this is going around the property that they're looking to buy, they're going to pull out and be like, you know what, we don't want to deal with any of this, so just go buy another property somewhere else. And we both know a 3-month delay can wipe out the entire margin if you are using bridging finance. However, if we are being honest, you can always recover from going over budget, but you can't recover from an illegal build. Now, here's where most flippers leave money on the table. For some reason, you never want to market before you finish. I don't get it. The biggest mistake flippers make in 2026 is waiting for it to be done before they start selling. Because the more time that goes by, it's just going to lead to you having to accept more and more risk. Because you might be running out on the term period for the financing costs and the holding costs. The longer you hold that property, the larger those holding costs will be. Because as more time goes on, every extra week equals another finance cost. Every extra month could expose you to the market shifting and then everyone not wanting to buy anymore. The only way I think is the best way to combat this is to use the strategy that I learned from Daniel Priestley, which is to become oversubscribed. And the only way I know how to do that in property is to use CGIs to visualize the final product, as it lets you start generating interest for the property before its completion. So as you're going through the development process, you'll be building that waiting list of buyers that are really keen and interested in buying that property and could actually start to outbid each other. Because just like anything, when supply is low and the demand is high, the price always goes up. But apart from that, it also lets you test the price sensitivity for that property. So then you can see how in demand it actually is and how many people are willing to bid above and beyond for it, which then creates a competitive tension between all the buyers, because then they're like, oh my gosh, I need to buy this house, because they're falling in love with it. You can adjust the finish level based on the demand. Here's an example, right? Once you've got a list of buyers on your waiting list, you can just ask them a question. What type of kitchen do you prefer? What type of bathroom do you prefer? All those things you can implement once you get to that stage in the development. From here onwards, you'll know exactly what kitchens, what tiling, what finish level is in demand at that point in time. So you completely de-risking any future flips that you want to do, because you know the market and you know what's happening in that area. And once you've got that list, you can secure pre-agreed viewings, and it gives them a chance to save more money just in case they'll need more for the high deposit that they'll probably end up paying. because having the buyer on a list where you can see all the people interested in the property will cause a psychological trigger of scarcity and FOMO. Because having that early interest will cause you less stress and give you more momentum to get it complete. And with you having that momentum, it gives you a ton of leverage, because when 5 buyers want it before it's even finished, who's going to control that negotiation? But here's the last infinity stone that you're going to need, and that's to stage the property to match the vision. You sold them the dream with the CGIs. Don't ruin it by letting them walk into empty rooms. The reason is empty rooms always look smaller, and buyers sometimes struggle with scale. So the emotions will drop instantly once they can't picture themselves living there anymore, because it's just completely empty and hollow, and it has no soul, no life to it. And if it's just soulless and empty, imagine that emotional drop from when they saw the CGIs and fell in love to now looking at absolutely nothing. This is pretty much how they're going to feel. So you've got to make sure the finished project matches the visuals as closely as possible. That includes the lighting, the furniture style, the target demographic. It hasn't got to be exactly the same furniture, but it has to be somewhat similar so they can relive the feeling they had when they first saw the property listing. Another psychological tip you could use to help you as well is that buyers pay more for certainty, as furnished homes make them feel like they can move in straight away, which will cause you to have even fewer negotiation resistance, because the difference between it's nice and we want it is usually based on the feeling it gives in person. As specs always convince the brain, but staging is how you convince their heart to buy. So if you want to flip property profitably in 2026, say that 3 times. You have to buy right, control the payments for the refurb, always secure planning approval. Then you have to market early and then stage properly. Because flipping isn't about renovation skill, it's about risk management. If you're planning on flipping property this year and you want to market it with CGIs, there's a link below for you to book a call. Now, if you want to know the real reason why buyers ignore off-plan listings, click this video right here. Bye.